Tonight we begin with the untold secrets of Egyptian priests. Step into the pre-dawn silence of a temple complex, where the air hangs heavy with the ghost of last night's incense, and the Nile's damp chill seeps through limestone walls. You can almost feel the cold, polished stone under your bare feet, hear the distant rhythmic lapping of water against the sacred lake, and catch the faint metallic scent of myrrh, still clinging to the curtains of the inner sanctum. It's a world of shadows and whispers, where every breath feels like a prayer and every step is measured by divine decree. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations! You've just been jolted awake in the pitch-black hour before dawn, your body screaming for more sleep, but your soul already answering a higher call. Your name doesn't matter here. You are a Wab priest, a pure one in the temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, and your day begins not with a gentle nudge, but with the internalized dread of ritual obligation. The room you share with other junior priests is dark, windowless, and smells faintly of sweat, linen, and the lingering aroma of natron from yesterday's purifications. You don't have a bed. You have a reed mat on a stone ledge, and your blanket is a thin sheet of linen that does little to fight the deep-seated cold that settles in this place like a stubborn ghost. From somewhere in the darkness, you hear the soft, rhythmic breathing of the man next to you, and further off, the unmistakable sound of someone already on their knees, whispering the morning's first invocations. No one speaks. Words are too heavy, too human for this sacred limbo between night and day. Your mind is still fuzzy with dreams of the outside world, the laughter of children in the market, the taste of fresh beer. But those thoughts are blasphemies now. You shut them down, hard. This is your life. Every single day. You push yourself up, joints cracking in protest. The stone floor is like ice against your soles, a sharp reminder that comfort is a luxury for the uninitiated. You fumble in the dark for the small oil lamp kept by your mat. Your fingers, clumsy with sleep, strike flint against steel once, twice. A spark catches, and a tiny flame blossoms to life, pushing back the shadows just enough to reveal the austere reality of your cell. The walls are bare, except for a single carved symbol of the Ankh, a reminder of the eternal life you serve. You dress quickly, by rote. Off comes the simple sleeping kilt. On goes the fresh, white linen garment reserved for temple duties. It's crisp, clean, and has been washed in the sacred lake by the temple laundresses. A minor miracle in a world where most people's clothes smell like the Nile on a bad day. But this isn't about hygiene, not really. This is about symbolism. You are wrapping yourself in purity, becoming a blank slate for the divine to write upon. Next comes the first test, the shaving. Every morning, without fail, you must shave your entire body, head, face, arms, chest, legs, everything. The razor is a sharp copper blade that you hone yourself on a leather strap. You work by the dim lamplight, the cold metal scraping against your skin, leaving behind a trail of goosebumps and raw vulnerability. No hair is allowed. Hair is impure, animalistic, a reminder of the chaotic world outside these walls. As you shave your head, you feel the strange, exposed sensation of your scalp meeting the cool air. It's humbling, stripping away your identity, layer by layer. You are no longer a man with a family or a past. You are a vessel, empty, waiting. The only hair permitted is the eyebrows, and even those are kept meticulously neat. You finish, wiping the blade clean with a cloth, and splash your face with water from a clay basin. The water is cold, drawn from the temples well before midnight, and left to sit under the stars to absorb their purity. It shocks you awake, truly awake for the first time. Now, the real purification begins. You leave your cell and join a silent stream of other priests filing out into the pre-dawn courtyard. The sky is still a deep indigo blue, speckled with the last stubborn stars. The air is cool and heavy with moisture from the Nile, and you can smell the wet earth, the blooming lotus flowers in the garden, and the ever-present scent of burning kaifi incense from the overnight vigil. No one speaks. Communication is through gestures, nods, and the shared understanding of duty. You line up at the edge of the sacred lake, a rectangular pool of crystal-clear water that reflects the fading stars. This isn't for swimming, this is for rebirth. One by one you wade into the water. It is shockingly cold, stealing your breath for a moment. You immerse yourself completely 3 times, each dunking accompanied by a silent internal recitation. I am pure. I am pure. I am pure. The water isn't just cleaning your body, it's washing your ba, your soul, scouring away the spiritual grime of the mortal world. You emerge, dripping and shivering, feeling lighter, colder and terrifyingly exposed. A senior priest stands at the water's edge, watching with hawk-like eyes. He doesn't need to say anything. His gaze is enough. One misstep, one hint of impurity, and you're back to square one or worse, relegated to cleaning the latrines for a month. Dripping and cleansed, you move to the next station, the mouth rinsing. You receive a small cup of a solution made from natron and water. It tastes foul, salty, alkaline, and utterly mouth-puckering. You swish it around, gargle, and spit it into a stone basin. This isn't for fresh breath. It's to purify your speech, to ensure that every word you utter today, every prayer you chant, is untainted by falsehood or malice. Your breath must be as pure as your body. After the rinse, you are given a paste of natron and ash to scrub your teeth with a frayed twig. It's gritty, unpleasant, but it whitens your teeth, and more importantly, symbolizes the scrubbing away of deceit. As you scrub, you think about the words you will soon speak to the god. They must be perfect, flawless. Any stumble, any mispronunciation could anger the deity and bring chaos to the entire kingdom. No pressure. Now finally, you are deemed externally pure enough to approach the god's house. But the internal purification is just beginning. You are led to a small antechamber just outside the main temple. Here, the air changes. It's warmer, thicker, saturated with the smell of myrrh, frankincense, and the faint, sweet odor of decaying offerings. This is where you will don the final layers of your sacred identity. A servant, a temple slave who has undergone his own purifications, helps you into the priestly regalia. First, a leopard skin is draped over your shoulders. The spots are a symbol of the stars, connecting you to the cosmos. The hide is old, stiff, and smells of age and sanctity. You feel the weight of it, both physical and symbolic. Then you are given a broad collar made of faience beads in shades of blue and green, representing the Nile's life-giving waters. It's cool and heavy against your chest. Finally, you place a simple white linen headcloth on your shaved head, securing it with a cord. You look at your reflection in a polished bronze mirror. You barely recognize yourself. The man from the reed mat is gone. In his place is a priest, a walking, talking purifier, a bridge between earth and heaven. The senior priest, an old man with eyes that have seen decades of dawns like this one, finally speaks. His voice a low, gravelly whisper that seems to vibrate in the incense-laden air. "The god is sleeping," he says. "We must wake him, gently." That's your cue. You follow him and the others into the hypostyle hall, a forest of massive stone pillars carved with hieroglyphs that tell stories of creation and kings. The hall is dark, illuminated only by the flickering light of oil lamps held by acolytes. Your bare feet make no sound on the polished floor. The only noises are the soft rustle of linen, the occasional crackle of a lamp, and the synchronized, shallow breathing of a dozen men moving as one. You can feel the anticipation building, a tangible pressure in the air. This is it, the moment before the veil is drawn back. You approach the massive cedarwood doors of the sanctuary, the naos, the innermost heart of the temple where the statue of Amun-Ra resides. The doors are sealed with a clay stamp, which the senior priest carefully breaks with a ritual knife. The sound of the cracking clay is unnaturally loud in the silence. This is the point of no return. You take a deep breath, inhaling the sacred scents, and prepare to meet your God. The cracked clay seal lies at your feet, a broken promise between the human and the divine. The massive cedar door now swings inward, silent on well-oiled hinges, revealing a darkness so profound it feels like staring into the void before creation. From the ritual purification, your skin is still tingling, your body humming with a cold, clean energy, but now a new kind of tension grips you, the terrifying, exhilarating pressure of crossing the final threshold. You follow the senior priest into the naos, the sanctuary. The air that hits you is a physical blow, thick, warm, and so saturated with the scent of aged myrrh, dried flowers, and the faint metallic tang of gold that it feels like you're breathing liquid history. It's hard to draw a full breath. The chamber is small, windowless, and feels like the inside of a jewel box. The only light comes from the single lamp the high priest carries, its flame dancing wildly, throwing monstrous, undulating shadows across walls covered in sacred texts. In the center of the room, on a low stone plinth, stands the naos, a shrine within a shrine, and within that, shrouded in shadows, is the god. Amun-Ra, the hidden one, the king of the gods. You can't see him clearly yet, just the faint glint of gold leaf catching the lamplight. Your heart is hammering against your ribs like a trapped bird. This is it, the moment you've spent years training for. The reason for all the shaving, the scrubbing, the silent mornings. Don't screw it up. The high priest, old Pateris, moves with a slow, deliberate grace that seems to defy his age. He places the lamp on a stand and turns to you and the other junior priests. His voice, when he speaks, is barely a whisper, but it carries an absolute authority that vibrates in your bones. The god sleeps, he repeats, his eyes reflecting the flickering flame. We are his servants. We must awaken him with the correct words, the correct actions. There are no second chances here. A mistake is not an error. It is a curse. He doesn't need to elaborate. You've heard the stories. The priest who dropped a ritual vase and whose family suffered a plague of boils. The lector priest who mispronounced a syllable and was found dead in his cell the next morning, his face frozen in a scream. Coincidence? Maybe. But in here, surrounded by the weight of millennia, there is no such thing as coincidence. There is only cause and effect, Mayat and Isfet, order and chaos, and you are standing right on the razor's edge between them. The ritual begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. Pateris raises his hands, and in a chant so low and resonant it seems to come from the stones themselves, he begins the hymn of awakening. The words are ancient, older than the pyramids outside, each syllable charged with power. You and the other priests join in, your voices blending into a single harmonic drone. The language is formal, archaic, full of phrases that haven't been used in common speech for 1,000 years. You don't just recite the words, you feel them. You shape them with your breath, your tongue, your soul. Awake in peace, great God, awake in peace. Awake in peace, who resides in the horizon. Awake in peace. The sound fills the tiny room, pressing against the walls, against your eardrums, against the very statue of the god. This is the first layer of awakening, the call. As the chanting reaches a subtle crescendo, Pateris moves to the naos. With a reverence that is almost tangible, he reaches out and draws back the linen veil, covering the shrine's entrance. The fabric, dyed a deep blue with costly indigo, whispers as it is pulled aside. And there he is, the god. The statue is smaller than you imagined, perhaps the height of a young child, but it radiates a presence that makes it seem to tower over you. It's made of ebony and cedar, overlaid with gold. The face is serene, majestic, with eyes of polished obsidian and rock crystal that seem to see straight through you, into the deepest, most hidden parts of your spirit. He holds a crook and flail crossed over his chest, symbols of dominion that look less like tools and more like weapons from this intimate distance. For a terrifying second, you feel the overwhelming urge to look away, to prostrate yourself, to run. You do none of these things. You hold your position. You keep chanting. Now comes the most sacred part, the dressing. The god has been sleeping in a simple linen shift. Now he must be dressed for the day. Patiaris gestures, and you step forward, your role clear. You are the bearer of the royal kilt. Your hands, which you scrubbed raw less than an hour ago, are trembling. You take the garment from a gilded box held by an acolyte. It is made of the finest, whitest linen, stiff with starch and embroidered with gold thread. It feels impossibly light, yet as heavy as a mountain in your grasp. You approach the statue. The obsidian eyes seem to follow you. This isn't a piece of art. This is the god's body, his anchor in this world. As Patiaris chants the liturgy of clothing, you carefully, so carefully, remove the old shift and drape the new kilt around the god's waist, securing it with a golden clasp shaped like a tie-at knot, the symbol of Isis. Your fingers brush against the cold gold of the statue. A jolt, like static electricity, shoots up your arm. Is it your imagination? Is it divine contact? You don't know. You don't dare to speculate. You complete the task and step back, your heart pounding in your ears. Next, the adorning. Another priest steps forward to place the broad collar around the god's neck, another to crown him with the tall, double-plumed crown of Amun. Each action is accompanied by a specific spell, a specific name of the god being invoked. O Amun, great of roaring, whose plumes are high. Each piece of jewelry isn't just decoration, it's a layer of identity, an aspect of his power being actively summoned and fastened into place. The air in the room is now electric, thick with the presence you are collectively building, invocation by invocation, gesture by gesture. Finally, the offering. This is the god's breakfast. It is not a grand feast laid out for a king. It is a symbolic, perfect, and pure meal. You present a small alabaster tray. On it rests a single perfect lotus flower, a small round loaf of bread, a jug of beer, and a slice of roasted meat. You don't just set it down, you present it. You raise the tray to the 4 cardinal directions, then place it at the feet of the god on a small altar. Patiaris recites the offering formula, the Hetep Dines W, a spell that transforms the physical food into a spiritual essence the god can consume. An offering which the king gives to Amun-Ra, 1,000 of bread, 1,000 of beer, 1,000 of alabaster, 1,000 of cloth, 1,000 of everything good and pure upon which a god lives. The words are a divine contract. We give you this. You give us life, order, the rising of the sun. The ritual is almost complete. The god is now awake, dressed, fed, and acknowledged. You feel a collective exhale in the room, though no one has made a sound. The tension lessens by a fraction of a degree. You've done it. You've successfully navigated the first and most dangerous hour of the day. But as you file out of the sanctuary, leaving the god to his divine solitude, you know this was just the opening act. The weight of purity isn't something you put on and take off. It's a trap you've willingly stepped into, a cage of sacred obligations that will define every moment until you fall, exhausted, back onto your reed mat tonight. And the hardest part? You wouldn't have it any other way. Back outside the sanctuary, the dawn light feels like an assault. After the cloistered, incense-thick darkness, the pale sun filtering into the columned hall is blinding. The sounds of the waking temple, distant voices, the shuffle of feet, the bleat of a sacrificial goat are jarringly loud. You've served the god, but the transformation is not yet complete. You are a purified vessel, but now you must be painted, sealed, and symbolically armed for the spiritual warfare of an ordinary temple day. You are led not to your cell, but to a different chamber, the House of Mourning, a room reserved for this exact purpose. The air here is cooler, scented with the simple, clean aroma of natron and the earthy smell of cosmetics. This is where you, the priest, become an icon. The intimacy of the sanctuary is replaced by a methodical, almost clinical process of self-assembly. A senior lector priest is waiting, surrounded by an array of alabaster jars, palettes, and applicators that look like surgical instruments. He doesn't smile. This is not a place for frivolity. This is where your face becomes a mask and your body a text of sacred symbols. He gestures for you to sit on a low stool. You obey, the cool stone a familiar discomfort against your bare skin. The leopard pelt feels heavy and strangely alive on your shoulders. The first and most critical step is the eyes. The lector priest picks up a small siltstone palette, its surface worn smooth from generations of grinding. He selects a lump of coal from a jar, a dense jet-black paste made from crushed galena. He adds a drop of sacred water and begins to grind it with a smooth, round pestle. The sound is a soft, gritty scrape, scrape, scrape that fills the quiet room. This isn't makeup. This is a shield, a weapon, a spiritual tool. As he works, he murmurs an invocation to Horus, the falcon god, whose all-seeing eye was wounded and restored, a symbol of protection and wholeness. I apply the eye of Horus to my face, he chants softly, so that I may see truth and be protected from the lies of chaos. He dips a slender ivory applicator, carved to resemble a lotus stem, into the freshly ground paste. Hold still, he commands, his voice low. The line must be perfect. You freeze, your breath held. The touch of the cold, wet applicator against your eyelid is startling. He works with the precision of a master scribe, drawing a thick black line along your upper lash line, extending it outwards and upwards in a dramatic sweep that elongates past the corner of your eye, reaching almost to your temple. He repeats the process on the other eye. The coal feels cool and slightly heavy on your skin. When he's finished, you blink, and your vision feels sharper. The world seems more defined. It's a psychological trick, of course, but in this context, it feels divine. The coal isn't just protecting you from the glare of the sun or warding off flies. It's framing your gaze, forcing you to see the world through a lens of sacred geometry. You are now looking out at the world through the eyes of Horus. Every glance, every observation is now a sacred act. Next, he moves to your hands. From another jar, he takes a different paste. This one, a vibrant green made from crushed malachite. This is the color of new life, of resurrection, of the lush papyrus marshes that sprang from the primordial waters. With a finer brush, he paints the Eye of Horus symbol, the wedjat, onto each of your palms. The sensation is a faint, wet tickle. With these hands you will make offerings, the lector priest intones. With these hands you will touch sacred texts. With these hands you will ward off evil. Let them be marked as the hands of a healer, a protector, a servant of Ma'at. The green paint gleams against your skin, a small, potent tattoo of power that you will carry until your next purification. It's a constant, visible reminder that your hands are not your own. They are tools of the god. Now for the scent. A temple servant brings forward a small carved wooden box. Inside, resting on a bed of linen, are solid cones of perfumed fat. They look like small, pale candles. These are not for your hair. You have no hair. The servant takes one and carefully places it on top of your headcloth. The weight is negligible, but the symbolism is immense. As the day wears on and the sun beats down, the cone will slowly melt, releasing a trickle of scented unguent that will run down your temples and neck. The scent chosen today is frankincense, sharp, resinous, and holy. This is your personal offering, a cloud of sanctity that you carry with you, marking your passage through the temple grounds. You are a walking censer. Where you walk, the air becomes sacred. The smell also has a practical, if grim, side effect. In the crowded, often sweltering temple, amidst the smell of animals, people, and decaying offerings, your personal fragrance is a welcome barrier. You smell like a god, while everyone else just smells like everyone else. The final stage is the inspection. The lector priest circles you, his eyes missing nothing. Is the coal smudged? Is the wedjat eye perfectly symmetrical? Is the perfume cone scented? He adjusts the leopard skin on your shoulder, straightens your broad collar. You are no longer a man, you are a living, breathing hieroglyph. Every element of your appearance now carries a meaning, a story, a piece of the cosmic puzzle. The white linen is purity, the leopard skin is the starry sky, the coal is the eye of Horus, the green wedjat is healing and power, the fragrance is prayer. You are a collection of symbols, assembled each morning like a complex piece of ritual machinery. He nods, finally satisfied. You are ready, he says. The god is awake. The temple is awake. You are now the designated Pure One for the morning watch. Your duties await. He doesn't need to list them. You know. You will now proceed to the temple archives to copy a section of a funerary text. You will supervise the weighing of grain offerings from the nearby estates. You will listen to the petitions of a few high-status individuals in the outer court. Mundane tasks, administrative drudgery. But you will do them all, while looking like a minor deity, while smelling like a sanctuary, while seeing the world through the protected eyes of a god. This is the paradox of the priesthood. The most sacred, terrifying moments are followed by the most boring, bureaucratic chores. But the purity trap ensures that there is no separation. You carry the sanctity of the nows with you into the grain stores. You take the divine presence into the accounting office. There is no break. There is no time when you are not on. The makeup isn't a costume you can take off at the end of the day. It is the final seal on the vessel, and you will wear it until you are scrubbed raw again tonight, only to have it reapplied tomorrow. The cycle is endless, and you are just another cog in the divine machine, painted gold and told to gleam. The sacred makeup is dry on your skin, a second layer of identity you dare not scratch. Now, dressed and adorned as a living symbol, your first practical duty begins, managing the divine leftovers, because the god has eaten, or rather absorbed, the spiritual essence of his breakfast, and what remains on the alabaster tray is now the most dangerous, powerful food in Egypt. This isn't mere leftover bread and beer. This is Chef, God's offerings, charged with divine energy and waiting to be redistributed in a carefully orchestrated cascade of holiness and political power. You move from the house of mourning to the offering halls adjacent to the main sanctuary. The atmosphere here is different, still reverent but buzzing with a low-level practical energy. Other junior priests are already there, along with temple scribes clutching their palettes and papyrus. The air smells different too. The pure incense of the inner sanctum is now mixed with the warm, yeasty scent of fresh bread and the sharp tang of beer from the temple breweries. Dozens of offering trays, identical to the one you presented to Amun-Ra, are being carefully carried in from various smaller shrines and sanctuaries within the complex. Each god, each aspect of a god, has been fed. And now, the leftovers from all of them are piling up. A senior priest, the overseer of the god's goods, stands at a central stone table, his face a mask of bureaucratic concentration. This is one of the most critical jobs in the temple. The redistribution isn't just about feeding people, it's about maintaining the cosmic and social order. The divine energy flows from the god to the offerings, and then must flow outwards to the priesthood, the pharaoh's administration, and eventually the dead. It's a sacred economy, and you're one of its accountants. The overseer points a stylus at you. You. Check the inventory from the shrine of Khonsu. Ensure the bread counts match the ledger. His voice is all business. The time for whispering hymns is over. You approach a stack of trays from the temple of Khonsu, the moon god. The bread loaves are small, round, and perfectly symmetrical. You pick one up, it's still slightly warm from the temple ovens. Using a tally stick, you count the loaves on the tray, then cross-reference it with the hieratic script on the scribe's papyrus. 12 loaves of white bread offered. 11 returned, you announce. The scribe makes a note. The missing loaf? It was the one you physically presented to the god's statue. Its essence was consumed by Khonsu. The physical object remains, but its spiritual calories are gone. It's a concept that would tie a philosopher in knots, but to you, it's as practical as balancing a budget. This is where the hierarchy of holiness becomes a menu. The highest quality chef, the choice cuts of meat, the finest beer, the whitest bread from the main sanctuary of Amun-Ra is reserved for the senior priests. It's their payment, their divine right. You watch as a lector priest selects a prime cut of beef from Amun's tray. By eating it, he isn't just filling his stomach, he is incorporating the power and blessing of Amun-Ra directly into his body. He is quite literally taking the god inside him. It's the ultimate form of communion. For a moment, you feel a pang of something, envy, awe, as you imagine the spiritual potency of that meal. Next, the medium-grade chef, slightly less perfect bread, vegetables, older beer, is allocated to the lower-ranking priests, the temple guards, and the vast army of artisans, scribes, and laundresses who keep the machine running. You yourself are entitled to a portion from this category. You receive a loaf of bread and a small jug of beer. You find a quiet corner to eat. The bread is denser than the airy loaves offered to Amun, more gritty. The beer is thinner, more sour, but as you eat, you perform your own small ritual. You whisper a quiet prayer of thanks to the god whose energy you are now absorbing. This isn't lunch. It's a sacrament. You are fueling your body with divine leftovers, and the act reinforces your place in the cosmic food chain. You are not at the top, but you are infinitely higher than the masses outside these walls, who will never taste chef. Then comes the final, most macabre tier of redistribution. The offerings that are now stale, wilted, or simply too numerous to be consumed by the living are carefully gathered. These are for the dead. They will be taken to the necropolis on the west bank and offered to the blessed dead in their tombs, feeding their cars in the afterlife. Nothing is wasted. The divine energy flows in a continuous circuit, from the earth to the temple to the god, to the priests, to the dead, and back to the earth again. You are a single cell in this metaphysical body. But the work isn't done. Even the empty trays and vessels must be handled with ritual care. You are tasked with carrying a stack of now empty alabaster bowls to the purification room. They cannot be simply washed in the common area. They must be scoured with natron and rinsed with water from the sacred lake, preparing them to be filled again for the god's lunch in a few hours. As you scrub the fine white stone, removing the last traces of sacred beer and bread, you realize the terrifying truth. This cycle never ends. The god must be fed 4 times a day: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a final meal before the night. Each feeding requires the same intense preparation, the same perfect recitations, the same redistribution. You've just finished the first one, and your back already aches. Your throat is dry from chanting, and the coal around your eyes is starting to feel itchy and heavy. You place the last purified bowl on a shelf to dry. From outside, you hear the sounds of the temple proper now in full swing. The chatter of visitors in the outer courts, the bellow of an ox being led to sacrifice, the distant rhythm of hammers from the artisan workshops. The real world is carrying on. But you are trapped in this endless loop of service, a sacred hamster on a divine wheel, where the most profound spiritual experiences are sandwiched between the mind-numbing tedium of inventory and dishwashing. The god's breakfast is over. Now, it's time to prepare for his lunch. The last purified bowl is set aside, your hands still smelling of natron and sanctity. But your service to the god is not limited to his stomach or his cosmetics. The temple itself is his body, a colossal stone representation of the cosmos, and like any body, it requires constant meticulous care. You are now handed a bucket of water, a bundle of linen rags, and a set of copper scraping tools. Your new duty, to read, clean, and maintain the sacred skin of the world, the temple walls. You are assigned to the hypostyle hall, the forest of pillars that serves as the beating heart of the public temple. Stepping into it now, in the full light of late morning, is a different experience entirely from the pre-dawn darkness. Sunlight slants down from the high, clear-story windows, illuminating swirling clouds of dust motes dancing in the air. The scale is overwhelming. 134 columns, each so massive it would take 5 men with outstretched arms to circle one. They aren't just supports. They are giant stone papyrus plants, their bud-shaped capitals blooming into the darkness of the ceiling high above, holding up a sky of carved stars and celestial birds. And every single inch of them, from the floor to the distant ceiling, is covered in writing. This is the language of stone. The hieroglyphs aren't mere decoration. They are the permanent, immutable words of the gods, the names of kings, the spells that keep the universe in motion. To let them become dirty, to let a spider build a web over the name of a pharaoh, or a layer of desert dust to obscure the eye of Horus, is an act of negligence that could have cosmic consequences. Your job, though it feels menial, is to ensure that doesn't happen. You start at the base of a column dedicated to Seti Yi. The carved reliefs are deep and crisp. A god, probably Ptah, holds a war's scepter, his face serene and imposing. You dip a linen cloth into your bucket of sacred lake water, wring it out, and begin to gently wipe the stone surface. The water is cold, and the cloth turns a faint grey as it lifts the fine, abrasive dust of Thebes from the hieroglyphs. As you clean, you can't help but read. Your years of scribal training kick in. Your fingers trace the grooves of the signs as you wipe. The good god Seti, beloved of Ptah, he who makes monuments for his father. It's a standard royal boast. But carved here in this immensity, it feels true. You are literally touching history, polishing the legacy of a dead king to ensure his name and his deeds continue to resonate in the ears of the gods. It's strangely meditative. The repetitive motion, the cool water, the slow revelation of brightly painted limestone from under a film of grime. The colors are still startlingly vibrant in the protected grooves. Brilliant blues from crushed lapis lazuli, sun-yellow ochre, vibrant green malachite. You are not just a janitor, you are a restorer of cosmic color, but the work is not without its perils. A senior priest walks past, his eyes scanning the walls like a hawk. He stops, points a finger at a section you cleaned yesterday. There, a cobweb, in the cartouche of Ramses' tomb. His voice is cold, disapproving. You look. Sure enough, a delicate, almost invisible silken thread stretches from the sun disk in the king's name to the beak of a carved duck hieroglyph. A tiny spider has dared to bridge the gap between royalty and divinity. It feels like a monumental failure. You scramble over, carefully remove the web with your scraping tool, and wipe the area again, muttering a quick apology to the king's car. The senior priest watches, says nothing, and moves on. The message is clear. There is no room for error, not even for spiders. The temple must be perfect. Further along, you encounter a more serious problem. A section of the wall, where a depiction of the pharaoh offering Mayat to Osiris should be, has a crack running through it. A flake of stone the size of your thumb has fallen away, taking with it the god's left foot and part of the offering table. This is a crisis. A damaged wall is a damaged cosmos. You don't try to fix it yourself. You immediately find the scribe on duty and report it. He makes a note on his papyrus. Later, a team of master artisans, stone carvers and painters who are also in a state of ritual purity will be summoned. They will mix new plaster, match the pigments, and recarve the missing section, all while chanting the appropriate spells to reconsecrate the repaired stone. You are just the first line of defense, the one who spots the disease before it can spread. You spend hours like this, moving from column to column, wall to wall. The bucket grows heavy, your shoulders ache. The coal around your eyes, so precise this morning, is now smudged with sweat and dust. You smell of wet stone and your own fatigue. The grand, awe-inspiring hall becomes, for a few hours, just a very large, very dirty room that you have to clean. This is the unglamorous truth of sacred service. For every heart-pounding moment in the presence of the god, there are 10 back-breaking hours of maintenance. The temple is a living body, and you are its humble, overworked immune system, fighting a never-ending war against dust, decay, and the indifferent passage of time. And as the sun moves higher, signaling the approach of the god's lunch, you realize you're only halfway done. The stone has spoken its eternal language, and you have spent the morning listening, one dusty, painstaking wipe at a time. The dust of the hypostyle hall still clings to your linen kilt and lingers in your lungs as you trade the cavernous, sunlit space for a place of shadows and secrets. You leave the public face of the temple behind, moving through a narrow, unmarked doorway that leads to the most restricted area of the complex, the Per Ankh, the House of Life. This is where the real power is cultivated, not in gold or stone, but in ink and idea. If the temple is the god's body, this is his beating, thinking heart. The transition is jarring. The roaring silence of the great hall gives way to an intense, focused quiet, broken only by the soft rustle of papyrus and the occasional scratch of a reed pen. The air is different here, dry, cool, and smells of papyrus, ink, and the faint, sweet scent of cedar wood from the shelves. No windows let in the distracting sun. Light comes from a few carefully placed oil lamps that pool illumination on reading stands, leaving the corners of the room in deep shadow. This is a library, a university, and a laboratory of the soul all in one. And you, a junior priest, are here for your daily lesson, your mind about to be stretched in ways your body never could be. Your instructor is the same lector priest who applied your coal this morning, but his demeanor has transformed. In the House of Mourning he was a ritual technician. Here he is a sage. He gestures for you to sit at a low writing table. Before you is a papyrus scroll, its edges slightly frayed with age. It is not a royal inscription or a funerary text. It is a star chart. The heavens do not lie. The lector priest begins, his voice low but sharp with intensity. But they do not speak plainly. To know the mind of Ra, you must first learn the pathways of his children. He unrolls the scroll further, revealing a complex diagram of constellations, not as pictures of bears and hunters, but as divine beings and sacred animals. The foreleg of an ox, a crocodile, a man. This is the science of the stars, the map that tells them when to plant, when to harvest, when to hold the great festivals, and crucially, when the Nile will rise. Your ability to read this chart isn't academic. It's a matter of national security. He points to a series of small notations next to a star known as Sephidet, what the Greeks would later call Sirius. When this star returns to the dawn sky after its 70 days of absence, the inundation will begin within a fortnight. We must be ready. The rituals of Happy must be performed with perfect timing. A miscalculation by a single day could mean the difference between a bountiful harvest and famine. The weight of this knowledge settles on you, heavier than any stone you lifted in the hall. You are not just learning astronomy, you are learning how to hold the fate of millions in your head. You practice with an astrolabe, a complex bronze instrument for measuring the angles of stars. Your hands, still rough from cleaning, feel clumsy holding the delicate tool. One wrong calculation, and the entire agricultural cycle of the most powerful kingdom on Earth could be thrown into chaos. No pressure, but the stars are only the beginning. The lector priest rolls up the star chart and replaces it with another, far more terrifying scroll. This one is from the Book of the Heavenly Cow. It describes a time when the god Ra grew old and humanity plotted against him, and how he sent the eye of his daughter, the goddess Hathor, as a raging lioness to slaughter them. The text is not just a story, it is a warning and a weapon. These words, the priest whispers, his finger tracing the hieroglyphs for slaughter and vengeance, are not to be read aloud. They are to be understood. To know the nature of the gods is to know the nature of power. They are not always benevolent, they are forces, and we are the ones who must negotiate with these forces. This is where theology becomes magic. He shows you another papyrus, a collection of spells for healing. One is for a scorpion sting. It includes practical instructions, a poultice of garlic and barley beer, but also a long, intricate incantation that must be recited exactly invoking the power of the god Horus, who was once stung by a scorpion and healed by his mother Isis. The magic isn't in the words alone, or the poultice alone, but in the perfect fusion of the two, performed by a pure vessel, you. The word is the vehicle for the will, the priest explains. The material substance is the anchor that ties the divine power to the earthly ailment. Without both, you are either a babbler or a grocer. With both, you are a healer. You spend the next hour copying a section of a medical text, your hand cramping as you try to perfectly replicate the complex hieratic script describing the symptoms of a tumor. The ink is black and red, the two sacred colors, and you mix it yourself on your palette. As you write, you feel the knowledge seeping into you, not just through your eyes, but through the very motion of your hand. This is not passive learning, it is an act of ingestion. You are consuming wisdom, and it is changing you. You look around at the other priests, their heads bent over their own scrolls. Some are studying architecture, learning the sacred proportions that make a temple resonate with cosmic harmony. Others are studying dream interpretation, learning to decipher the messages the gods send in sleep. The collective intelligence in this room is staggering. This is the engine of Egyptian civilization, humming quietly in a windowless room. As the lesson ends and you carefully re-roll the papyrus, you feel a new kind of exhaustion, not of the body, but of the mind and spirit. The whispered knowledge is a burden as much as a gift. To know the precise moment the Nile will flood is to carry the anxiety of that prediction for months. To know a spell that can save a life is to bear the responsibility for every life you fail to save. You leave the house of life, stepping back into the late afternoon sun, but you are not the same person who entered. You have tasted the fruit from the tree of divine knowledge, and the sweetness is already curdled with the bitter understanding of what that knowledge demands. The God doesn't just want your purity and your labor, he wants your intellect, your will, and your silence. The weight of celestial calculations and healing spells still presses against your temples as you emerge from the house of life. But the God's schedule waits for no one, not even for those wrestling with cosmic truths. The morning's intellectual seclusion is violently shattered by the building frenzy of the temple at high noon. The sun is now directly overhead, and Ra is at the peak of his daily journey. This isn't just another meal service. This is the zenith of divine power, and the liturgy must match its ferocity. You hurry to rejoin the stream of priests converging on the main sanctuary. The atmosphere is electric, charged with a different energy than the quiet, intimate dawn ritual. There's less silence, more purposeful movement. The air itself feels hotter, thicker, vibrating with the collective anticipation of the approaching ceremony. From the outer courtyards, you can hear the gathered crowd, a low, distant rumble of hundreds of voices, the bleating of specially selected animals, the rhythmic beating of ceremonial drums. The noon liturgy is partly a public spectacle, a reminder to the people that the God is active and powerful, and you are one of the key performers in this divine theatre. There's no time for the full, meticulous purification of the morning. Instead, you and the other priests undergo an accelerated version. You file past basins of natron water, splashing your face, hands and feet. A senior priest quickly inspects your coal, straightens your leopard skin, and adjusts your headcloth. It's less about achieving perfect purity and more about not offending the god with obvious sloppiness. The feeling is less of spiritual preparation and more of soldiers readying for a battle parade. You are being groomed for display, for power, for the performance of absolute control. You take your assigned position in the procession that will move from the inner temple out towards the more public spaces. In your hands, you carry a sacred rattle, a sistrum made of bronze and faience. Its jangling sound is believed to appease goddesses like Hathor and Bastet, but today it will also serve to command the attention of the masses. The high priest, now wearing a more elaborate headdress with tall plumes and a gilded robe, raises his staff. A hush falls over the assembled priesthood. The only sound is the frantic final tuning of harps and the deep, preparatory breath of the chanters. Then a single, thunderous beat from a giant frame drum, and the procession begins. You move out of the dark halls and into the blazing sunlight of the first open court. The wall of sound and heat hits you like a physical force. Thousands of faces turn towards you, a sea of humanity pressed against the barriers, their voices rising in a wave of awe and desperation. The smell is overwhelming. Sweat, perfume, animal dung, and the smoky scent of hundreds of individual offering braziers. You keep your eyes forward, your face a mask of detached divinity, but you can feel their gazes, their hopes, their prayers washing over you. They aren't seeing you, the man who was just scrubbing walls and studying stars. They are seeing a priest of Amun-Ra, a sliver of the divine, and their only conduit to the god's ear. The chanting begins, not the soft whispers of the dawn, but a powerful, rhythmic declamation meant to be heard over the crowd. "Hail to you, Ra, perfect of aspects!" You and the other priests shout in unison, your voices straining to project authority and harmony. You who are at the peak of the sky, your rays embrace the two lands. You shake your sistrum in time, the metallic jangle cutting through the human noise, a sound meant to both please the gods and hypnotize the people. This is religion as political theater, and you are both actor and prop. The high priest stops at a raised platform in the center of the court. This is the climax. He raises his arms, and the crowd falls into a tense, vibrating silence. He begins to recite the great hymn to the Aten, but adapted for Ra at his zenith. His voice is magnificent, trained for decades to project without seeming to shout, to fill the entire space without losing its melodic, sacred quality. How manifold are your works! They are hidden from the face of men, O sole God, like whom there is no other. As he speaks, junior priests bring forward the choicest offerings from the people, baskets of fruit, jars of wine, trinkets of gold and silver. These are not for the god's consumption, but for his blessing. The high priest gestures over them, chanting spells of consecration. A cloud of incense, thick and cloying, billows around the platform, making the scene hazy, dreamlike, otherworldly. Then, the moment of divine interface. The high priest, his voice dropping to a tone of intimate command, begins to speak as the god. It's a practiced ventriloquism, a lowering of his voice, a change in the rhythm of his speech. "I am the light that gives sight to all eyes," the voice booms, and a collective gasp ripples through the crowd. "I am the heat that ripens the grain. Without me there is only darkness and chaos." People prostrate themselves, weeping, holding up their hands in supplication. You stand rigid, maintaining the facade, but inside you feel a strange disconnect. You know this is a performance, a carefully orchestrated piece of ritual drama. But the faith of the crowd is so raw, so potent, that it almost feels real. For a terrifying second, you wonder if the god has actually chosen to inhabit the high priest's words. The line between ceremony and miracle blurs until you can no longer see it. As quickly as it began, it's over. The high priest lowers his arms, his posture returning to normal. The crowd erupts in a roar of approval and relief. The god has spoken. Order has been reaffirmed. The procession turns and begins to move back towards the inner sanctuary, leaving the public to their celebrations and petitions. The noise fades behind you, replaced by the familiar, cool silence of the stone corridors. The transition is jarring. One moment you are at the center of a roaring universe of faith. The next you are back in the quiet, administrative heart of the temple. Your ears ring in the sudden quiet. The scent of the crowd still clings to your linen, a stark contrast to the pure incense of the naus. You have performed your duty. You have helped project power and maintain Ma'at. But as you walk back into the shadows, you can't shake the feeling that you've just participated in the greatest magic trick of all, and you're no longer sure who the real magician is. The god's dramatic public performance is over, but his divine digestion waits for no one. As the echoes of the crowd fade behind the massive stone gates, the priesthood immediately shifts gears from theatrical spectacle to intimate, repetitive precision. The noon liturgy was for the people. The god's lunch is for the god alone, and it must be served with the same exhausted perfection as his breakfast, even as your own stomach growls, and the morning's fatigue begins to crystallize in your muscles. You hurry back through the now familiar route to the offering halls, the grandeur of the public ceremony already feeling like a distant dream. The transition is brutal. One moment you are a channel of cosmic power before thousands, the next you're counting loaves of bread again. The same alabaster trays are being prepared, the same scribes are checking their lists, the same overseer is standing with the same look of mild disappointment. It's déjà vu with a side of sacred beer. The only difference is the subtle change in the offerings. Lunch features more vegetables, different cuts of meat, a slightly sweeter wine. The god, it seems, has a more varied palate than his priests. You're assigned to the tray for the sanctuary of Mut, Amun's consort. Her offerings are traditionally more delicate: lotus flowers, honey cakes, roasted duck instead of beef. As you count the honey cakes, 12 offered, 11 returned, you can't help but feel the absurdity. You've charted the stars, you've channeled divine wrath for the masses, and now you're counting cakes for a goddess who will only consume their spiritual essence. The cosmic and the comical are forever intertwined in this place. Your back aches from hours of cleaning and standing. The kohl around your eyes has migrated, creating faint, sooty shadows on your cheeks. You are a living representation of Ma'at, and you desperately need a nap. The procession to Mut's sanctuary is quicker, quieter. There's no crowd to impress, no need for the booming voice or the dramatic gestures. This is housekeeping for the divine. The chanting is softer, more hurried. The senior priest in charge of Mut's ritual seems bored, going through the motions with a practiced efficiency that borders on carelessness. He draws back the veil, recites the awakening hymn at double speed, and gestures for you to proceed with the dressing. You step forward with the ceremonial dress for the goddess's statue, a beaded net dress over fine linen. As you carefully drape it over the sacred form, you notice a smudge on the statue's shoulder, a fingerprint from this morning's ritual perhaps. A flaw, an imperfection. In the grand scheme, it's nothing, but in this world of absolute purity, it feels like a mountain. Do you mention it? Risk the senior priest's wrath for pointing out his oversight, or stay silent and risk the goddesses? You choose survival. You say nothing, completing the dressing and stepping back. The offering is made, the spells are recited, and the tray is left at the goddess's feet. The entire ritual takes half the time of the morning ceremony. As you file out, you glance back at the smudge. It seems to glow in the dim light. A tiny speck of human fallibility in a realm that demands perfection. You feel a pang of guilt, quickly suppressed. There's no time for moral quandaries. The god's lunch is over, which means it's time for the priest's lunch, another meal of divine leftovers. Back in the redistribution hall, the hierarchy is even more apparent than this morning. The senior priests have already taken the choicest cuts from Amun's tray. What's left for you and the other junior priests is looking decidedly second-rate. Stale bread ends, a jug of beer that's gone flat, a piece of fish that smells interesting. You find your quiet corner and eat without enthusiasm. The bread is dry and crumbly, the beer is warm, the fish is suspiciously soft. This is the reality of the sacred economy. The gods get the prime cuts, the senior priests get the good stuff, and you get whatever's left that hasn't actually started moving on its own. You eat it anyway, whispering the prayer of thanks through a mouthful of gritty bread. You're not just hungry, you're running on empty. The divine energy from this meal feels weaker, like a faint echo of the morning's power. As you chew, you watch the temple scribes at their work. They're not just redistributing food, they're managing a divine corporation. Ledgers are filled with lists of offerings received from estates up and down the Nile. Accounts are balanced. Quotas are checked. This temple isn't just a house of worship. It's the center of an economic web that spans the kingdom. A web powered by divine favor and meticulously recorded on papyrus. The scent of ink and papyrus mixes with the smell of stale bread, creating a bizarre perfume of bureaucracy and sanctity. You're a tiny cog in this machine, being fueled by subpar god food to continue your work. You finish your meal and wash it down with the flat beer. It does little to revive you. The afternoon stretches ahead, a vast desert of time filled with more cleaning, more copying of texts, more administrative duties. The thrilling terror of the dawn ritual feels like it happened to a different person in a different lifetime. This is the grinding truth of sacred service. For every peak spiritual experience, there are endless valleys of tedium. The god has been fed his lunch, you have been fed your leftovers, and the wheel of the day keeps turning, dragging you along with it toward the god's dinner and your own exhausted collapse. The only consolation is that everyone around you looks just as tired, just as drained, just as trapped in this beautiful, endless, sacred cycle. The last crumb of stale bread is washed down with flat beer, leaving a hollow feeling that has little to do with hunger. Just as you contemplate the mind-numbing prospect of an afternoon scrubbing more hieroglyphs, a temple messenger approaches, his steps quick and purposeful. The overseer of mysteries requires your service in the chamber of hearing. The fatigue vanishes, replaced by a spike of anxiety. This is different. This isn't maintenance or ritual. This is where the theoretical knowledge from the house of life gets tested in the messy, unpredictable real world. The chamber of hearing is not a grand hall or a dark sanctuary, but a small, windowless room adjacent to the temple's outer court. The air is thick with the scent of fear sweat and cheap perfume, a stark contrast to the sacred incense you're accustomed to. This is where selected priests interface with the wealthy and the desperate, those important enough to warrant an audience, but not divine enough to enter the inner precincts. Your role today, to be the ears and voice of the god for a powerful nobleman from the court of the pharaoh. The petitioner is already there, a man named Nebamon, draped in fine linen that does little to hide his trembling hands. He smells of expensive unguents and pure panic. He's flanked by two servants who look equally terrified. The overseer A priest so old he seems made of papyrus and dust stands calmly by a small statue of Thoth, the god of wisdom. He gestures for you to take your place beside him. The noble Nebamon has been troubled by dreams, the overseer says, his voice dry as tomb dust. Dreams of drowning in the Nile, then being eaten by crocodiles with the faces of his business partners. He seeks the god's interpretation. This is it. No star charts, no rehearsed rituals. This is raw, human terror dressed up in gold bracelets. Nebamon launches into his story, his words tumbling out in a frantic, jumbled mess. The water, it was so cold, and the crocodile, it spoke with the voice of my partner, Paneb, saying, "The accounts are unbalanced. Before it bit my leg." He's practically weeping now. You maintain your mask of calm detachment, but inside, your mind is racing. This isn't just a nightmare, it's a cry for help wrapped in divine packaging. The man is clearly embroiled in some shady financial deal, and his conscience, or his fear of being caught, is eating him alive. The overseer listens, his eyes closed, as if hearing a distant melody. When Nebamon finishes, the old priest turns to you. "Well," he says, his voice barely a whisper, "you have studied the dream books. You know the symbols. What does the god say?" The weight of this responsibility crashes down on you. Your interpretation could ruin this man, or save him. You glance at the statue of Thoth, its ibis head seeming to tilt in curiosity. You recall the relevant sections from the dream papyri. Water can signify the unconscious, emotion, or the legal system. Crocodiles represent betrayal, hidden danger, and yes, the god Sobek. A speaking animal indicates a message from the divine realm, but the dream books are only a guide. The real art is in the application. Do you tell him the literal, terrifying truth that his partner is likely embezzling and plans to destroy him? Or do you soften the blow, give him a spiritualized interpretation that allows him to save face? You look at Nebamon's desperate, pleading eyes. This isn't just about decoding symbols, it's about psychology, politics, and survival. The overseer watches you, his expression unreadable. This is a test. You take a deep breath, choosing your words with the care of a surgeon selecting a scalpel. The Nile in your dream is not the river of water, but the river of your affairs. You begin, your voice taking on the measured, resonant tone you use for rituals. Its coldness indicates a lack of warmth and trust in your partnerships. The crocodile is indeed a warning of a hidden threat, one that speaks with the voice of familiarity. Nebamon pales, his knuckles white. You continue, offering a way out. But to be bitten on the leg is to be hindered, not devoured. The god is warning you, not condemning you. He urges you to examine your accounts with the precision of a scribe and to strengthen your position before the current grows too strong to swim against. It's a masterpiece of ambiguous divination. It's the truth, but palatable, actionable. Nebamon's face transforms from terror to grim determination. He nods vigorously, reaching for a purse of gold rings to offer as payment. The overseer gives you an almost imperceptible nod of approval. You've passed. You haven't just interpreted a dream. You've performed spiritual triage, stabilizing a panicking soul and sending him back into the world with a purpose, all under the guise of divine revelation. After Nebamon leaves, bowing profusely, the overseer turns to you. You did well. You gave him the truth he could bear, not the truth that would destroy him. That is the real art. The gods speak in riddles because our hearts cannot hold their full clarity. He gestures to the door. There will be more. A merchant's wife who dreams of barren fields. A general who sees hawks fighting in the sky. Each one a puzzle, each one a person clinging to your words like a raft in a storm. Remember, you are not just a translator of dreams. You are a physician of the soul, and your medicine is hope, wrapped in the authority of the divine. You leave the chamber of hearing, the scent of fear and perfume clinging to your robes. The encounter leaves you feeling strangely powerful and profoundly vulnerable. You've wielded knowledge like a weapon, but you know it's a double-edged sword. The line between divine interpreter and sophisticated fraud feels thinner than a sheet of papyrus. You return to the hypostyle hall, to the mindless, comforting task of cleaning stone. The repetitive motion helps quiet the echoing questions in your mind. Did you truly channel the will of the gods? Or did you just tell a frightened man what he needed to hear to get on with his life? In the end, you realize it might be the same thing, and that thought is the most terrifying dream of all. The nobleman's gold rings have been logged in the temple ledger, his conscience neatly soothed by your ambiguous interpretation. But there is no rest. The overseer of mysteries gestures toward a heavy curtain. "Now," he says, his voice devoid of all emotion, "the others await." You push through the fabric and step into a different world entirely. The controlled, intimate anxiety of the chamber of hearing is replaced by a wall of sound, smell, and sheer, undiluted human need. This is the outer court, and you are about to face the gods' other clients, the common people. The heat hits you first, then the noise. Hundreds of voices, talking, shouting, weeping, praying, all at once. The air is a thick stew of scents, sweat, garlic, cheap beer, donkey dung, and the cloying sweetness of wilting flower offerings. After the rarefied atmosphere of the inner temple, it feels like walking into a barn that's also a marketplace and a funeral parlor. A low stone barrier separates you from the crowd, but their desperation reaches across it like grasping hands. You take your place at one of the designated stations, a small stone booth with a shelf for offerings. A temple guard stands nearby, his presence a silent warning against any who might get too eager. The first petitioner is a woman, her face lined with a grief so fresh it seems to steam in the hot air. She clutches a small, linen-wrapped bundle to her chest. Her son, she explains between ragged sobs, has a fever that won't break. The local healers have failed. She has brought her last valuable possession, a copper mirror, as an offering. She doesn't want a dream interpreted. She wants a miracle. "The god must see him. You must make the god see him," she pleads, her voice cracking. This is not a nuanced psychological puzzle. This is a mother watching her child die. You cannot let her into the temple. The rules are absolute, but you can't send her away empty-handed. This is where the priest becomes a pharmacist and a magician. You take the copper mirror, it's warm from her grip, and place it on the shelf. You instruct a junior acolyte to bring a specific amulet from the temple stores, a small faience figure of Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess of childbirth and protection. You dip it in a bowl of water from the sacred lake while reciting a spell from a healing text, one you memorized in the House of Life. "Oh, Isis the Great, the magician, come heal this child as you healed Horus." The words feel different here, shouted over the din of the crowd. You hand the damp amulet to the woman. "Tie this around his neck. Wash his brow with water in which this has been soaked. The goddess will protect him." The woman's eyes flood with a fragile, desperate hope. She clutches the amulet as if it were the child himself, bowing and weeping thanks before stumbling back into the crowd. You watch her go, the copper mirror feeling heavy and inadequate on the shelf. You have no idea if it will work. You can only hope the placebo of divine faith is strong enough to fight the infection. The next petitioner is a farmer, his skin leathered by the sun, his hands calloused and cracked. His complaint is practical, terrifyingly so. The irrigation canal that waters his field has silted up. His neighbors blame him. He believes a rival has cursed the water flow. He offers a sack of his best onions. "Make the water run, Father, or my family starves." This isn't a matter of spiritual unease. It's about hydraulic engineering wrapped in a supernatural complaint. You can't unsilt a canal with a spell, but you can give him authority. You write a brief note on a flake of limestone in hieratic script, a request for the local administrator to inspect the canal stamped with the temple's seal. To the farmer, this scrap of stone is as powerful as any amulet. It is the voice of the god, speaking to the bureaucracy that controls his life. He takes it with trembling, reverent hands, as if you've handed him a lightning bolt. And so it goes, a stream of human trouble. A baker whose bread won't rise, a wife whose husband beats her, a merchant whose boat is stuck in low water. For each, you have a solution, a spell, an amulet, a written note, a handful of sacred natron to sprinkle around their home. The solutions are a bizarre mix of practical advice, administrative leverage, and pure theater. You are a therapist, a lawyer, a doctor, and a con artist, all rolled into one linen-clad package. The people don't care about the mechanics. They care that someone in a leopard skin and coal, someone who smells like the gods, has listened and given them something to hold on to. You are selling hope, and business is booming. By the time the sun begins to dip lower in the sky, your voice is hoarse from shouting over the crowd. Your ears are ringing, and the scent of human desperation has seeped into your very skin, overpowering the frankincense from your perfume cone. You have solved nothing and everything. You haven't unsilted a single canal or cured a single disease, but you have sent dozens of people back to their lives feeling seen, heard, and armed with a fragment of divine power. As the court is finally cleared and the great gates are closed, a profound exhaustion settles over you, deeper than any physical fatigue. You have been the receptacle for an entire city's fears. You look at the pile of offerings on your shelf, a few copper trinkets, some vegetables, a rough-made pottery shard. It's a pittance compared to the nobleman's gold, but it feels heavier, because you know that for these people it was everything they had, and you can only hope that the god, in his golden silence, is paying attention. The echoes of the desperate crowd fade as the great bronze gates of the outer court clang shut, but the silence that follows is anything but peaceful. It's the silence of impending paperwork. The emotional drain of playing physician to 1,000 souls is now replaced by the meticulous, mind-numbing work of accounting. You exchange the chaotic arena of public petitions for the strict, ordered chaos of the temple scriptorium. This is where the real power resides, not in amulets or interpretations, but in ink and numbers. The scriptorium is a long rectangular hall, its air buzzing with a different kind of intensity. Dozens of scribes, each at their own low desk, are bent over rolls of papyrus, their reed pens scratching out the endless story of the temple's wealth. The smell is distinctive. The sharp, vegetal scent of papyrus, the metallic tang of ink, the faint odor of sweat from concentrated brows. This is the administrative engine of the god's empire, and you have a seat at the controls, for today at least. Your leopard skin feels absurdly out of place here, a relic of ritual in a world ruled by ledger lines. A senior scribe, a man named Amenemope, whose eyes have been permanently squinted from a lifetime of reading fine script, hands you a stack of papyri. They are incoming reports from the temple's agricultural estates downriver. "The harvest from the delta lands," he says without looking up from his own work. "Check the figures against last year's yields. The overseer of the granaries expects the report before the god's dinner." He says, "the god's dinner," with the same tone one might use for a tax deadline, because that's essentially what it is. You unroll the first papyrus. The hieratic script flows in neat columns, detailing the delivery of emmer wheat, barley, flax, and dates. The numbers are staggering. Thousands of sacks, hundreds of cattle. This isn't just a religious institution, it's the largest corporate landowner in Egypt, a divine multinational with the pharaoh as its majority shareholder. Your job is to ensure that not a single loaf of bread, not a single jug of beer, goes unaccounted for. You dip your reed pen into the black ink and begin the tedious work of cross-referencing. Your mind, which earlier wrestled with cosmic truths and human despair, is now fully consumed by the mathematics of grain storage. It's a different kind of meditation, one of pure, soulless precision. But the numbers tell their own stories. You notice an anomaly in the report from the estate near Per Sobdu. The flax yield is down 15% from last year, but the accompanying note from the local steward blames unseasonable winds. You've studied the star charts. You know the winds were not unseasonable. The steward is either incompetent or skimming from the top. You make a note in the margin. Fact check. Request dispatch of temple inspector to Per Sobdu estate. This is where your training pays off. A priest who doesn't understand astronomy is a priest who can be lied to about crop yields. You are a detective of divine finance. The work expands beyond agriculture. Another pile of documents details the output of the temple's workshops. The linen weavers, the carpenters, the goldsmiths, the potters. Every piece of linen that clothes a priest. Every ceremonial bowl that holds an offering, every golden statue being crafted for a new shrine, it's all here itemized, costed, and logged. You are tracking the life cycle of sanctity from raw material to ritual object. A junior scribe next to you is muttering as he counts the output of the sandal makers. 122 pairs of priestly sandals this month. Does the god have 1,000 feet we don't know about? He whispers. You almost smile. The absurdity is a welcome relief from the relentless data. Then comes the most sobering documentation, the census records of the temple's labor force. The Hemaju, the serfs attached to the temple's lands. They are not slaves, not quite, but they are bound to this earth, their lives and labor part of the god's assets. You read lists of names, ages, skills. A man, Kayemwasit, a potter, died last month. His son, a boy of 10, is now listed as his replacement. You don't just cross out the father's name and add the son's. You feel the weight of the action. You are officiating over a transfer of human capital, a life of toil inherited as dutifully as a plot of barley fields. The sacred and the profane are inseparable. The same hand that anoints a statue of a god also tallies the human cogs that keep the divine machine running. Your back aches from hunching over. A cramp is forming in your writing hand. A dark smudge of ink stains your thumb. The perfume cone on your head has melted away to a pathetic nub, its fragrance long since defeated by the smell of paper and sweat. You look up from your desk. The sun is sinking, casting long, dramatic shadows across the hall, but the scratching of pens continues unabated. The god's dinner is approaching, and the accounts must be perfect. The ritual in the sanctuary is the glamorous facade, the public performance. This, the endless scratching in a dusty hall, is the foundation upon which it all stands. You are a bureaucrat of the heavens, and the weight of your burden is measured not in gold, but in the infinite, crushing detail of 1,000 papyrus scrolls. You pick up your pen again. There is still so much to count. The final papyrus scroll is rolled and sealed, your hand permanently curled into a scribe's claw, and your mind numb with numbers. But the temple's rhythm cares nothing for mental fatigue. As the sun bleeds orange across the western horizon, casting the hyperstyle hall in long, dramatic shadows, the familiar dread of ritual obligation returns. The god's dinner approaches, and with it the final exhausting cycle of service. This is not the vibrant energy of noon or the hopeful quiet of dawn. This is a weary, mechanical performance, executed by souls running on empty. You drag yourself from the scriptorium back to the purification rooms. The sacred lake water feels colder than ever, a shocking slap that does little to clear the fog of accounting from your brain. The accelerated cleansing feels like a parody of the morning's meticulous ritual. A quick splash, a hurried mouth rinse, a perfunctory check by a senior priest who looks just as drained as you feel. Your coal is reapplied hastily, smudging at the edges. The leopard skin is straightened with a tired tug. You're going through the motions, a sacred wind-up toy winding down. The perfume cone placed on your head feels like a final, cruel weight. You are a fading symbol, your sanctity stretched thin as old linen. The procession to the sanctuary for the god's dinner is a ghost of its former self. There are no booming chants, no dramatic pauses. The priests move in a synchronized trance, their voices a low, monotonous drone. Hail to you, Ra, who sets in the western horizon. The words are the same, but the feeling is gone. You're not summoning divine power, you're putting the god to bed. The senior priest's hands move with robotic precision as he draws back the veil. The god's statue seems different in the fading light, less a vessel of terrifying power, more a piece of expensive furniture that needs nightly maintenance. The ritual of undressing begins. This is the reverse of the morning ceremony, a systematic deconstruction of the divine identity. You step forward to remove the god's ceremonial kilt. The gold clasp is cold against your fingers. As you carefully fold the linen, you notice the same smudge from this morning, still on the statue's shoulder. It seems to mock you, a testament to the day's accumulated compromises, the tiny failures of perfection that have stacked up like unpaid debts. You say nothing. What would be the point? The god will be shrouded for the night anyway, his imperfections hidden from even his own priests. The offerings are presented, the god's dinner, the same trays, the same spells, the same redistribution that now feels less like a sacred communion and more like a tired, logistical chore. You receive your portion of chef, a dried-out piece of fish and a hard crust of bread that looks like it could stop a spear. You eat it standing in a shadowy corner of the offering hall, too tired to find your usual spot. The prayer of thanks is a mumble. The divine energy you're supposed to be absorbing feels as weak and diluted as the last dregs of beer in your jug. You are running on fumes, and the god's leftovers are doing nothing to refill the tank. But the day is not quite over. As full darkness falls, a different atmosphere descends upon the temple. The public gates are locked, the administrative buildings are silent, and a deeper, more profound ritual begins, the final hymns to usher Ra through the perilous underworld. You gather with other priests in a small chapel dedicated to the night. No grand processions here. This is for the god, and for you. The hymns are older, stranger, filled with descriptions of serpent demons and lakes of fire that Ra must navigate until his rebirth at dawn. The chanting is soft, almost a lullaby for the sun god and for yourselves. In this darkened room, the facade finally drops. The performative power, the bureaucratic authority, the mask of divine connection, it all melts away in the face of the genuine, shared vulnerability. You are just a group of exhausted men singing to help a god they cannot see, through a darkness they cannot comprehend, praying that the sun will in fact rise again, because you are too tired to imagine the alternative. This is faith stripped bare, and it is somehow more powerful than all the grand noon liturgies combined. When the final hymn fades, there is only silence. The senior priest dismisses you with a nod. No words are needed. You walk back to your cell through black corridors, guided by memory alone. The stone is cold beneath your bare, aching feet. In your cell, you remove the leopard skin, the headcloth, the broad collar. You look at your smudged coal in the bronze mirror. The person staring back is a stranger. Hollow-eyed, ink-stained and smelling of sweat, smoke, and faded holiness. You collapse onto your reed mat without even wiping off the makeup. The day is done. The god is asleep. The accounts are balanced. The people have been heard. You have served. And as you drift into a sleep so deep it feels like a little death, one final coherent thought forms before oblivion claims you. Tomorrow, it all begins again. The god sleeps. The rituals are complete. But in the pre-dawn darkness, another kind of temple awakens, one that deals not in prayers, but in prophets. Before the first hymn to Ra is chanted, before the sacred bread is baked, the temple's economic engine roars to life. You are summoned not to the sanctuary, but to the docks along the temple's private canal, where the real business of divinity begins. The scent of incense is overpowered by the smell of damp wood, fish, and the sharp tang of the Nile itself. You stand with other junior priests, shivering in the cool air as the first barges arrive. These aren't ceremonial boats. They're floating warehouses piled high with the wealth of the gods' vast estates. Sacks of grain from the delta, bolts of linen from temple workshops, jars of wine from vineyard lands, even ingots of copper from mines in the Sinai that bear the cartouche of Amun-Ra. The god doesn't just own a temple, he owns a significant portion of Egypt itself, and you are about to help manage his portfolio. A senior priest, the overseer of the treasury, barks orders, his voice cutting through the mist. You check the grain shipment against the manifest. Any damp sacks, any signs of pilfering, you note it. The god's wealth is not to be trifled with. This is where faith meets finance. You take a wooden tally board and begin counting, your stylus making quick marks in the wax. The numbers are staggering. Thousands of deben weight of grain, enough to feed a city for months. But this isn't for feeding the hungry, it's for building power. The temple functions as the central bank of Thebes, a divine corporation with the ultimate credit rating. As you count, merchants approach the overseer, bowing low. They are here for loans. They want to borrow the gods' grain to seed their fields, the gods' copper to forge their tools. The interest they will pay, often another 20% on top of the principal, will flow back into the temple's coffers, making the god even richer. You watch a merchant pledge his own lands as collateral. If he fails to repay, those lands will become the god's lands. The divine portfolio grows, one defaulted loan at a time. But the temple's economic tentacles stretch even further. After the docks, you are sent to the temple's central granaries, colossal mud brick structures that tower over the surrounding buildings. The air inside is cool and thick, with the dusty, sweet smell of stored grain. Scribes are everywhere, their lamps casting dancing shadows on walls lined with overflowing storage bins. Here, the grain is not just stored, it is weaponized. In times of famine, the temple can release it at controlled prices, creating dependence and loyalty. In times of plenty, it hoards, controlling the market. The high priest doesn't just interpret the god's will, he sets the price of bread for the entire region. You help record the incoming and outgoing stocks, your entries becoming part of an economic strategy designed to ensure the temple's dominance forever. It's a chilling kind of power, silent, patient, and utterly ruthless. Next, you witness the temple as a production powerhouse. You are led to the workshops, a sprawling complex of courtyards where the smell of sawdust, molten metal, and bleaching linen fills the air. Dozens of artisans, weavers, carpenters, jewelers, potters are at work. They are not slaves, but they are not free. They are hemaju, serfs bound to the temple, their skills and their children's skills belonging to the god in perpetuity. You see a master goldsmith carefully beating a sheet of gold that will become a divine necklace. A weaver works a massive loom, creating the fine linen for priestly garments. Every object they produce, from a simple clay pot to a golden statue, is an asset. Some are for ritual use, but many are for trade. Temple linen is famous throughout Egypt and beyond. Temple-made amulets are exported by the thousands. The god is not just a landowner and a banker, he is a manufacturer and an exporter. The final and perhaps most cynical part of the hidden economy is the sale of sanctity itself. In a special annex, scribes sell letters to the dead, written spells that relatives can deposit in tombs to communicate with deceased ancestors. They sell pre-written Book of the Dead spells for those who can't afford a custom version. They even sell guaranteed places in the afterlife, recorded in temple ledgers for a hefty fee. There is a price for everything. for a healing amulet, for a favorable dream interpretation, for a prayer to be said on your behalf. The temple has commodified access to the divine, and business is booming. You watch a wealthy widow pay for a year's worth of daily offerings to be made for her husband's soul. The transaction is recorded with the same bureaucratic efficiency as a shipment of grain. As you leave the economic heart of the temple, the first rays of the sun finally touch the tops of the pylons. The morning ritual will begin soon. You will once again don the mask of the pure, detached priest. But now you know the truth. The sanctity, the rituals, the divine connection, it's all underpinned by this ruthless, sophisticated and relentless economic machine. The god may live in the sanctuary, but his power is built on the docks, in the granaries and in the ledgers. You are not just a servant of the god. You are an employee of the largest, most powerful corporation in the ancient world, and the shareholders demand their daily dividend. The ledgers are closed, the god's wealth accounted for, but now a different kind of accounting begins, one measured in feverish brows and labored breaths. You are summoned from the scriptorium's dry arithmetic to the temple's infirmary, a place where the abstract power of the god is tested against the brutal physical reality of human suffering. The air here is thick with the scent of crushed herbs, sour wine, and the sweet metallic smell of fear. This is where faith becomes medicine, and you are about to become a physician. The infirmary is a series of small, whitewashed rooms off the main temple complex. The cries of the sick and injured create a low, constant hum of distress. You are assigned to assist the Sunu, the physician priest, a man named Pentu, whose hands are stained green from grinding malachite, and whose eyes have seen every affliction the Nile can conjure. He doesn't look at you as you approach. His focus is on the boy lying on a linen-covered pallet. The child is burning up, his skin slick with sweat, his breathing a wet, ragged rattle in his chest. His mother kneels nearby, her face a mask of silent terror. This is not a nobleman's vague dream. This is a fight for a life. Pentu's movements are swift and sure. He places a hand on the boy's forehead, then chest. The demon of fever has entered his lungs, he murmurs, more to himself than to you. We must drive it out with the breath of the onion and the strength of the honey. This is the Egyptian healer's art, a seamless, unquestioned fusion of the practical and the magical. To Pentu, the infection is both a physical imbalance and a spiritual invasion. To treat one without the other would be malpractice. He barks orders at you. The honey and the garlic, grind them together with beer. You rush to a shelf lined with clay jars, each labeled with hieratic script. You find the honey, thick and golden, and the pungent garlic bulbs. You grind them in a stone mortar, the sharp, spicy smell cutting through the room's morbid atmosphere. As you work, Pentu is already performing the first ritual. He holds an onion to the boy's nose. Breathe, child, breathe in the strength of Geb, the earth god, whose tears are onions and whose power strengthens the lungs. It's a sympathetic magic. The onion, which makes a healthy person cry, will supposedly drive the sickness to tears and out of the body. The boy coughs weakly, but his chest seems to loosen slightly. You bring the paste. Pentu takes it and adds a pinch of something else from a small pouch, what looks like moldy bread. Fact check. Specific medicinal molds used. He doesn't explain. He smears the mixture on the boy's chest while reciting a spell from the Eber's papyrus, his voice a low, compelling drone. Flow out, fetid nose, flow out, son of fetid nose, you who break the bones, who destroy the skull, who cause suffering in the 7 holes of the head. I have brought you something to make you leave. The words are ancient, powerful, and to your modern ear, bizarre. But the mother watches, her eyes wide with hope. The spell is as important as the poultice. Next comes a more alarming procedure. A man is brought in with a gash on his leg, deep and oozing. Pentu examines it, then looks at you. You have copied the surgical texts. You know what to do. Your stomach lurches. You've written about this, but never done it. Pentu hands you a copper needle and a length of linen thread. Sew it. I will hold him. There is no anesthesia beyond a strong gulp of palm wine. The man bites down on a leather strap as you begin. Your hands, so steady with a pen, are trembling. You push the needle through the man's flesh, trying to mimic the diagrams you've seen. It's horrifying. The flesh is resistant, rubbery. The man groans, his body straining against the assistants holding him down. Pentu chants a hymn to Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of healing and plagues, her fierce power invoked to fight the decay in the wound. The combination of your clumsy stitching and his unwavering chant somehow works. The wound is closed. The day continues in this vein, a relentless parade of suffering. A woman with a weeping eye infection treated with a paste of crushed lapis lazuli and a prayer to Horus. A builder with a broken arm set with wooden splints, while spells are recited to knit the bone, as Osiris's body was knit together. You witness the full spectrum of their knowledge. Effective, practical remedies, like honey's antibacterial properties existing alongside seemingly superstitious rituals. But you notice something. The patients who receive both the medicine and the spell seem to relax. Their breathing slows, their panic recedes. The magic isn't just for the gods. It's a powerful psychological balm, a placebo that gives the body permission to fight. By the time the last patient is seen, you are covered in sweat, blood, and herbal stains. The kohl around your eyes has run into muddy tracks. You are exhausted, but also strangely exhilarated. You have seen the temple's power manifest not in gold or grain, but in a child's cooling fever and a man's stitched wound. As you clean your tools, Pentu looks at you. "You did well," he says, his voice gruff. "Remember this, the body and the spirit are one wound. You cannot heal one without the other. Our spells give the Ka the strength to fight, just as our medicines give the body the strength." He turns to leave, then pauses, "And wash that needle thoroughly. The god abhors sloppiness." You look at your hands, the hands of a scribe, a priest, and now a healer. They have never felt more useful, or more stained by the messy, beautiful, terrifying reality of life. The last patient has been stitched and sent away. The herbal stains still fresh on your hands, but there is no time to rest. A different kind of fever is spreading through the temple, the frantic, chaotic energy of the Opet festival. For weeks, the entire complex has been preparing for this, and now the moment is here. The quiet precision of daily ritual is about to be drowned in a tidal wave of public ecstasy, and you are caught in the undertow. The change is immediate and overwhelming. The temple courtyards, usually places of ordered procession, are now packed with a seething mass of humanity. The air, normally scented with incense, is thick with the smell of roasting meat, spilled beer, sweat, and the overwhelming perfume of thousands of lotus flowers offered by devotees. The noise is a constant, deafening roar, drums beating, sistrums jangling, people shouting prayers, singing, crying. It's a sensory assault that makes the public noon liturgy feel like a private whisper. You are shoved and jostled as you try to make your way to your post. Your priestly regalia, usually a mark of respect, now feels like a target, marking you as a conduit for the madness. Your assigned role is among the bearers who will carry the sacred bark of Amun-Ra from Karnak to the temple of Luxor. This is the heart of the festival, the god's annual journey to visit his consort Mut. It's meant to be a sacred marriage, a cosmic renewal of the land's fertility. In practice, it's a logistical nightmare disguised as a parade. The bark isn't a boat for water. It's a massive gilded shrine containing the god's statue mounted on long poles. It is incredibly heavy, a burden shared by 24 priests. You take your position, your shoulders already bracing for the weight. The senior priests are screaming instructions, their voices hoarse and barely audible over the din. Lift on the third drum beat. Do not stumble. Do not set him down. The signal comes. You heave, muscles straining. The weight is even worse than you imagined. It feels like you're lifting a small building. The crowd erupts as the god is raised above their heads. The procession begins, lurching and unsteady, moving at a snail's pace through the avenue of sphinxes connecting the two temples. The distance is less than 2 miles, but it will take all day. The sun is merciless. Sweat pours down your face, stinging your eyes and streaking your coal. The leopard skin on your shoulders is soaked and heavy, smelling like a wet animal. Your arms tremble with the strain. This isn't spirituality. It's an endurance test, and the crowd is relentless. They press in from all sides, reaching out to touch the bark, throwing flowers, pouring libations of beer that splash onto your feet. Their fervor is terrifying. They aren't just watching, they are participating, pulling the god's power into themselves through sheer manic energy. A woman breaks through the cordon and tries to throw herself under the bark, hoping for a divine blessing. The guards drag her away, screaming. You keep walking, one agonizing step at a time, your world narrowed to the burning in your muscles and the deafening roar in your ears. You are no longer a healer or a scribe. You are a beast of burden for a god on a joyride. Hours pass. The journey becomes a blur of pain and noise. You switch out with other bearers periodically, but the relief is brief. During one break, you gulp warm, flat beer from a skin, your hands shaking so badly you spill half of it. You see other junior priests looking just as shattered, their sacred makeup ruined, their fine linen tunics drenched and filthy. We are the sacred elite, you think, with a burst of hysterical irony, and we look and feel like we've been dragged through a swamp. Finally, as the sun begins to set, the Luxor temple gates appear ahead. A final massive surge of effort, and you carry the god into his temporary home. The moment the bark is set on its pedestal, a profound exhaustion washes over you, so complete it feels like dying. But there is no rest. The rituals must be performed, the symbolic marriage of Amun and Mut. You stand through the ceremony, your body trembling with fatigue, barely able to mumble the responses. The god is united with his consort. The land is renewed. The crowd outside is in a frenzy of celebration, and all you can think about is the walk back tomorrow. You collapse that night in a temporary cell at Luxor, too tired to even wash the grime from your skin. The sounds of the celebrating city echo through the night, but you are already asleep, dreaming of the crushing weight and the endless roaring crowd. The festival is the pinnacle of your sacred service, the most public display of the god's power. And as you drift into oblivion, one clear thought emerges. You would rather clean 1,000 hieroglyphs or stitch 100 wounds than ever be a festival bearer again. The god's joy is his priest's exhaustion, and the price of renewing the world is paid in the agony of their shoulders. The festival's echoes have faded, the last drunken shouts from the city swallowed by the deep, healing silence of the temple at night. But the quiet outside does nothing to calm the storm inside you. As you lie on your reed mat, every muscle screaming from the day's ordeal, a different kind of ache settles in, the heavy, cold weight of everything you know and everything you pretend to be. The frenzy is over, and in its wake the secrets you carry have grown teeth. You stare into the darkness of your cell, but all you see are the day's images flashing behind your eyes. The smudge on the god's shoulder you chose to ignore. The nobleman's dream you interpreted with convenient ambiguity. The farmer's canal you couldn't actually unsilt with a spell. The child's fever that might break regardless of your incantations. Each memory is a thread, and together they are weaving a shroud of doubt around your faith. You are the guardian of Ma'at, of cosmic order, but your daily life feels like a carefully managed performance of Isfet, chaos, compromise, and controlled deception. The most corrosive secret isn't a single act. It's the cumulative understanding of how the machine truly works. You know the tremor in the high priest's voice during the noon liturgy is not divine possession. It's the strain of a man who drank too much wine the night before to quiet his own doubts. You know the miraculous voice of the god from the festival bark was a clever senior priest speaking through a copper tube hidden in the shrine. You've seen the ledgers where donations from desperate commoners are logged next to expenses for repairing the roof, the sacred and the mundane forever locked in a financial embrace. This knowledge isolates you. You look at the other junior priests during the pre-dawn purification. Their faces are masks of serene devotion. Are they feeling this same gnawing emptiness, or are they truly blessed, their faith an unassailable fortress? You cannot ask. To voice doubt is not just to fail, it is to blaspheme. It is to risk everything. Your position, your family's honor, your very place in the afterlife. So you remain silent, a screaming statue in a garden of tranquility. The weight manifests in strange ways. During the morning ritual, as you chant the hymns to awaken Amun-Ra, the words feel like dust in your mouth. You look at the god's obsidian eyes, and for the first time, they don't seem all-knowing. They seem like polished stone. When you handle the chef, the god's leftovers, you no longer feel you're absorbing divine energy. You're just eating stale bread, and the prayer you whisper tastes like ash. The sacred coal around your eyes doesn't feel like the protection of Horus. It feels like a prisoner's mask, marking you as a participant in a beautiful, endless lie. You find yourself watching the commoners in the outer court with a new, painful empathy. You see their raw, uncomplicated faith and feel a pang of something like jealousy. They believe, truly believe. They think you hold the keys to the divine when you're starting to suspect the doors you open lead only to more corridors, more mysteries, more unanswered questions. You are a gatekeeper who has never seen the kingdom on the other side of the gate. The ultimate secret, the one that haunts you most in the deep night, is the fear that it's all true, and you're just too flawed to perceive it. What if the god is truly present in the statue, and your inability to feel him is a personal failing? What if the spells do work, and your shaky faith is the reason your healing amulets sometimes fail? This is the most brilliant and cruel trap of the priesthood. Doubt itself can be framed as a spiritual weakness, a lack of purity, thus forcing you to strive harder, to perform the rituals with even more desperate precision in the hope of feeling what you're supposed to feel. You roll over on your mat, the straw crunching like breaking bones. The first hint of dawn is a grey smear under your door. Soon the cycle will begin again. You will get up, you will shave, you will purify, you will chant, you will wear the mask, you will perform your part. The weight of the secrets won't lift. You will simply learn to carry it better, to walk with a straight back, even as the doubt settles in your soul like a second, heavier skeleton. You are the guardian of eternity, and the price of that guardianship is the slow, silent erosion of your own certainty. You close your eyes, not in prayer, but in resignation. The god demands faith, but all you have to offer is the stubborn, weary performance of it. And somehow you suspect that for the machine to keep running, that might just be enough. The weight of your doubts is a constant companion, a silent ghost that walks with you through every ritual. But tonight, as the temple sleeps, you are led to a place where even ghosts might fear to tread. The overseer of mysteries finds you in your cell, his lamp casting frantic shadows. He does not speak, only gestures for you to follow. You move beyond the scriptorium, beyond the inner sanctuaries, to a section of the temple you never knew existed, a place without hieroglyphs, without decoration, where the very walls seem to swallow the light. He stops before a door made of dark, unpolished cedar, bound with bronze that shows no patina of age. There is no handle, only a series of complex locks. This is not a place for worship, it is a vault. What you see here the overseer whispers, his voice hushed with a reverence you've never heard him use for the public rituals. Does not leave this room. It is the god's true face, and few can bear to look upon it. He works the locks with a series of soft, precise clicks. The door opens inward, sighing as it moves, releasing a breath of air so ancient and dry it makes you cough. The chamber is small and circular. The air is motionless, sterile, and smells of dust, dried herbs, and something else. Something metallic and old, like blood that turned to powder centuries ago. The walls are lined with shelves, and on these shelves are not golden statues or jeweled offerings, but containers. Alabaster jars sealed with black wax, cedar boxes bound with silver wire, a basket woven from reeds that looks as if it would crumble at a touch. This is not a treasury of wealth. It is a library of power, raw and unadorned. The overseer goes to a specific shelf and takes down a long, narrow box made of ebony. He opens it. Inside, resting on a bed of faded linen, is a knife. But it is like no knife you have ever seen. The blade is not copper or bronze, but a dark, smoky obsidian, so sharp its edge seems to be a line of nothingness, a cut in reality itself. The handle is carved from a single piece of hippopotamus ivory, worn smooth by hands, long turned to dust. This, the overseer says, his voice barely audible, was used in the founding of this temple. It consecrated the ground, not with prayers, with a different kind of offering. He does not elaborate. He doesn't need to. The implication hangs in the air, cold and heavy. He shows you other things. A papyrus so old, the hieroglyphs are almost faded, detailing a ritual to summon a sandstorm against an enemy army. Not a prayer for Ra to send one, but a spell to command the wind itself. Another jar contains what looks like black salt. From the Wadi of Horror in the western desert, he says, a single grain in a man's wine ensures his dreams will be haunted by his own fears until he confesses every sin he has ever committed. This is not the benevolent magic of healing. This is the god's fist, not his open hand. Then he brings out the final object, a small, unadorned statue of Amun-Ra, no taller than your hand. It is made of plain, unfired Nile clay. It is crude, almost childish. This is the god's first house, the overseer says. Before the gold, before the granite, before the first stone of Karnak was laid. This is what he was, when he was a spirit of the air, a whisper in the reeds. He hands it to you. The clay is cool and surprisingly heavy. To hold it is profoundly disorienting. This humble lump of earth holds more terrifying power than the towering gold-leafed statue in the sanctuary. It is a reminder of a time when the god was hungry, not grand, a force of nature, not a patron of the state. This is the ultimate secret, the one that dwarfs all your petty doubts. The grand temple, the public festivals, the elaborate theology, it is all a later addition, a beautiful cage constructed around a raw, primal power that the priesthood barely understands and can only barely control. You are not serving a civilized king of the gods. You are feeding a vortex of ancient immoral energy, dressing it in linen and gold, to make it palatable, to make it safe for human consumption. The doubts you carried were not a failure of faith. They were the first faint recognition of this truth. You leave the forbidden room, the overseer relocking the door behind you with finality. The familiar corridors of the temple now feel different. The painted gods on the walls seem like portraits of a family you now know has a monstrous hidden relative locked in the basement. You return to your cell, but sleep is impossible. You have seen behind the curtain, and the knowledge is a fire in your mind. The weight of the secrets is no longer a burden, it is an initiation. You understand now that the real service of a priest isn't to believe without question. It is to know the terrifying truth and still put on the leopard skin each morning, to stand before the people and perform the beautiful, necessary lie that keeps the chaos at bay. The terrifying truth of the forbidden room settles in your soul like a sediment, changing the color of everything you see. Days turn into weeks, then months, and the shocking revelation becomes simply the truth. The knowledge no longer burns. It has cooled into a permanent low-grade understanding that tints your every action. You perform the morning ritual with the same precision, but now you see the crude clay statue beneath the gold leaf. You chant the hymns with the same resonance, but you hear the ancient, desperate whispers beneath the polished theology. You have learned the ultimate secret. To serve the God is to balance on a razor's edge between cosmic order and primal chaos. This hard-won perspective transforms your daily duties. When you stand in the outer court listening to petitioners, you no longer see yourself as a divine intermediary. You see yourself as a dam, holding back the torrent of human fear and desperation that would otherwise overwhelm the delicate fiction of order. When a mother begs for a healing amulet for her child, you give it to her with genuine compassion, understanding that the hope it provides is itself a form of medicine, regardless of the spell you chant. The performance is no longer a lie, it is a service, a way of translating unbearable cosmic truths into bearable human comforts. You notice the same understanding in the eyes of the older priests now. The slight tremor in the high priest's hand during the offering isn't just age, it's the weight of what he knows. The bored efficiency of the priest serving Mutt's lunch isn't laziness, it's the conservation of spiritual energy for the moments that truly matter. You are all actors in a sacred play, but now you understand the script's deeper purpose. The gold, the incense, the chanting, they are not the source of the power. They are the insulation, the protective layers that allow mortals to handle a force that would otherwise incinerate them. This realization brings a strange peace. The doubts that once tormented you were merely the growing pains of a deeper faith. Not a faith in the God's benevolence, but a faith in the system's necessity. You understand why the forbidden knowledge is kept secret. To give a common farmer a glimpse of the obsidian knife or the sandstorm spell would shatter his world. He needs to believe in a just, orderly universe where prayers are answered and morality is rewarded. You and your brother priests are the guardians of that necessary illusion, the shock absorbers between humanity and the raw, terrifying nature of the divine. Your work in the scriptorium takes on new meaning. The endless lists of grain, the census of laborers. This isn't just bureaucracy. It is the meticulous construction of stability. Every correctly recorded number, every balanced account is a brick in the wall that holds back Isfet, chaos. You are not a mere accountant. You are an architect of reality, using papyrus and ink to maintain the fragile bubble of civilization in a universe that is largely indifferent to it. The smudge on the god's shoulder no longer troubles you. Perfection is not the point. Continuity is. Even the festival frenzy feels different now. As you strain under the weight of the sacred bark, you understand you are not just carrying a god. You are carrying the collective hope of an entire civilization. The roaring crowd isn't just celebrating, they are participating in a massive communal reinforcement of order. Their faith fuels the engine as much as your rituals do. The exhaustion, the pain, the sensory overload, it's the price of renewing the contract between the people and the powers that govern their world. You look at the new, young initiates with a mixture of pity and nostalgia. You see the fervent, unquestioning belief in their eyes, the belief you once had. You watch them flinch at their first mistakes, terrified of divine retribution. You no longer fear the god's wrath in the same way. You have seen the tools in the forbidden room, and you understand that the god's displeasure is not a moral judgment, it is a cosmic imbalance, a failure of the system. Your fear has been refined into responsibility. The leopard skin on your shoulders no longer feels like a costume. It feels like a uniform. The kohl around your eyes no longer feels like a mask. It feels like armor. You are a professional in the business of the divine, and you have learned the most important lesson of all. The true secret of the priesthood is not any single spell or hidden object. It is the daily, grinding, unglamorous work of maintenance. It is showing up day after day with the full, terrifying knowledge of what lies beneath the surface, and still choosing to polish that surface until it shines. The balance is not something the gods maintain. It is something you build, one ritual, one ledger entry, one whispered spell at a time. And as the years begin to weigh on your own bones, you understand that this, not blind faith, is the highest form of service. The decades of balance have settled into your bones, making them ache in the damp river air and stiffen during long periods of kneeling. The morning shaving reveals more of your scalp than hair, and your hands, once steady for surgery and script, now betray a faint, constant tremor. You are an old priest now, your service a well-worn path in the temple's stone floor. And with this age comes the final, inevitable duty, the one you have performed for others your whole life, but must now turn inward. You must prepare for your own final service to the god, the meticulous orchestration of your death. The signs are undeniable. A crushing fatigue that the god's leftovers cannot cure, a cough that lingers long after the season of floods has passed. The younger priests look at you with a new deference, mingled with a subtle impatience. They are ready for your position, for your cell, for your portion of chef. You watch them with a strange detachment. You remember being them. The cycle continues, indifferent to the individuals who power it. Your life of service has been a long lesson in your own insignificance, and this is the final exam. You begin the practical preparations, a strange inversion of your daily rituals. In the secrecy of your cell, you unroll a fresh papyrus, not for temple accounts, but for your own. This is your final ledger. You list your possessions. A few changes of linen, a bronze mirror, your personal scribe's kit, a small worn amulet of Thoth given to you by your own teacher decades ago. These will become your burial goods, the tools you will take into the afterlife. The act feels both sacred and profoundly bureaucratic. You are auditing your own soul, declaring your assets before the ultimate tax collector. Next, you commission your own coffin. You go to the temple workshops where you once tallied their output and speak with the master carpenter. You choose the wood, cedar of Lebanon, expensive, but you have saved your stipend for this. You discuss the iconography. You will not have a golden mask, but you insist on the face being painted with careful, solemn kohl, just as you have worn in life. The most important detail is the texts. You spend days selecting the precise spells from the Book of the Dead that will be painted inside your coffin. Not the entire book, you are not a pharaoh, but the crucial ones. The spell for not dying a second time, the spell for not having your heart speak against you, the spell for transforming into a living bay soul. This is your final desperate act of curation, trying to pack a spiritual suitcase for a journey to a destination you have only ever described to others. You seek out the embalmers, the wet YW, men who work in a secluded compound on the temple's outskirts, perpetually smelling of natron and decay. This is not a formal arrangement, not yet, but a consultation between professionals. You discuss the procedure with the chief embalmer as if planning a complex ritual, which in truth it is. You specify that you want the evisceration to be done through the traditional incision in the flank, not the more expensive and elaborate method through the nose. You are a practical man to the end. You discuss the canopic jars, who will guard your organs. You choose Imseti, the human-headed son of Horus, for your liver. The conversation is chillingly clinical, yet filled with a profound shared understanding. You are designing your own transformation from a man into an artifact. But the most difficult preparation is internal. You walk the familiar corridors at night, running your trembling hand over the hieroglyphs you cleaned as a young man. You stand in the hyper-style hall and look up at the stars painted on the ceiling, the same stars you charted for the Nile's inundation. You sit in the scriptorium one last time, the smell of papyrus and ink triggering a flood of memories, of doubt, of revelation, of weary perseverance. All the secrets you have carried, the terrifying knowledge from the forbidden room, the weight of the god's true nature, it all must now be reconciled. What do you truly believe awaits you? The faith of your youth is gone, burned away by experience. The simple certainty of the field of reeds feels like a story for commoners. But the cynical doubt of your middle years has also mellowed. You have seen too much, felt too much. You have channeled power, even if you don't fully understand its source. You have seen healing happen under your hands. You have felt the collective will of thousands during the festival focus into something tangible. As you prepare to face the weighing of the heart, you realize you are not hoping for a paradise of endless feasting. You are hoping for continuity, for a chance to continue the work, for your bar to remain connected to this place, this duty, this endless, beautiful struggle to impose order on chaos. The afterlife you envision looks strangely familiar. It looks like the temple. The final night arrives. You lie on your reed mat, knowing it is for the last time. You do not pray for forgiveness or for a light heart. You simply offer a final, silent report to the God you have served. The accounts are in order. The rituals are complete. The secrets are safe. You close your eyes, not in fear, but in a state of professional readiness. You have performed your final service. The rest is in the hands of the embalmers, the mortuary priests, and the scales of Ma'at. Your work here is done. The final breath leaves your body, but the work continues. The temple does not pause. Even as your body is carried to the embalming tent, the mourning rituals proceed without you. A younger priest takes your place in the procession, his kohl freshly applied, his voice still finding its resonance. The cycle is relentless, and your absence is merely a space waiting to be filled. But what remains? What endures beyond the daily grind of service, beyond the secret knowledge, beyond the final, carefully prepared death? Your legacy is not in gold or granite. It is not in the grand statues that will bear a pharaoh's name for millennia. Your true legacy is woven into the fabric of civilization itself, in the quiet, uncelebrated work of maintenance that allowed a culture to flourish for 3,000 years. While kings waged wars and built monuments that shouted their glory, you and your brother priests were the silent, steady heartbeat that kept Egypt alive. You were the accountants who predicted famines and averted them. You were the doctors who blended science and magic to heal plagues. You were the astronomers who tracked the stars to plant and harvest at precisely the right moments. You were the librarians who preserved knowledge through invasion and collapse. The pyramids are impressive, but they are tombs. The true miracle of Egypt was its continuity, and that was your creation. Think of the farmer in the field. His simple faith in the god's seasonal journey, giving him the patience to tend his crops. That faith was cultivated by you. Think of the merchant on the docks, trusting that the temple's standardized weights were true, that contracts written in hieratic would be honored, that trust was enforced by you. The entire concept of Ma'at, justice, truth, cosmic order, was not an abstract philosophy. It was a daily practice, enacted in your scriptoriums, your infirmaries, your courts of petition. You built the invisible infrastructure of civilization, the shared reality that allowed millions to live together in relative harmony. And what of the secrets? The terrifying knowledge of the forbidden rooms, the understanding that the divine was a raw, amoral force that needed to be caged in ritual. That, too, is your legacy. It is the profound, unsentimental wisdom that true order is not the default state of the universe. It is a fragile, hard-won achievement, built and rebuilt every single day by human hands. The gold and the incense were not the point. They were the tools. The point was the discipline, the repetition, the stubborn refusal to let chaos win. You understood that humanity cannot bear too much reality, and so you became the guardians of the necessary veil, the translators of the unbearable into the endurable. Centuries will pass. The empire will falter. New gods will be worshipped in these very halls. The language you spoke will fall silent. The rituals you perfected will be forgotten. The very names of the gods you served will become curiosities. The sand you so despised will drift into the hypostyle hall, burying the hieroglyphs you cleaned with such care. From the perspective of a future age, it will all look like superstition. The animal-headed gods, the obsession with death, the endless repetitive ceremonies. But they will miss the point entirely. They will dig up your tombs and marvel at the gold, but they will overlook the true treasure, the meticulous records, the medical texts, the star charts, the legal codes. They will see the obsession with the afterlife, but miss the profound love for this life that motivated it all. They will call you primitive for fearing chaos, not understanding that you were the first civil servants, the first scientists, the first philosophers, wrestling with the same fundamental problems of existence that would haunt every civilization to come. Your legacy is not in what survived in stone, but in what was woven into the human story. The concept of a soul facing judgment based on its moral actions. The idea that knowledge is sacred and must be preserved. The understanding that society requires trust, order, and shared ritual to function. These are the seeds you planted, seeds that would travel across deserts and oceans, taking root in foreign soil, shaping the world in ways you could never have imagined. So as your mummified body is sealed in its tomb, as your name is spoken for the last time by those who knew you, know this: you have not failed. The temple will eventually crumble. The god's name will be forgotten. But the work, the endless, beautiful, frustrating work of building order out of chaos, of finding meaning in repetition, of serving something greater than yourself, that work continues. It continues in every teacher, every doctor, every scientist, every clerk who shows up day after day to do their small part in holding the world together. You are gone, but the pattern you helped weave endures. The sacred machine has many operators across many ages, and you were one of its most faithful, most essential parts.